And we are live. Hi, this is Praios and I'm a professional gambler. Today's topic will be Poker Solver Misconceptions, Facing My Fears. This is a video from Phil Galfond. I will look into this and we will listen to his commentary and then I will add what I have to say and let's see.
So I've gone through kind of an interesting progression of poker knowledge growth in the past 5-10 years where, I was around before the advent of poker solvers, which, are a huge, milestone in poker theory and poker education.
Yeah, me too. And I think back in the day, it was so much harder to get good because you had to do the calculations with pro poker tools and build your own things. And it was also way easier to be a lot better than your opponents. Yeah, just because you had to put in the hard work and you also need to be good enough in mathematics in order to figure things out. And if you applied the wrong ranges or your math was shit, then your results were shit and you learned the wrong things. By the way, as we are on the topic solvers, I recommend two products. First is PLO Vision. This is from Phil Galfond's poker site. You will also find the link below if you watch on YouTube, or you can find it on my Twitch about page. And PLO Vision is the name of the product. And the other one is a PLO Trainer. That's the one which I most of the time use in my videos. This also has now 5-card PLO sims and solves. So this might be also interesting for you. Check it out for sure. And let's get back into the video.
So, there were software tools, but they were an entirely different thing. There were software tools that you could look at the stats, your own stats.
Yep. Talking about stats, this is Holdem Manager or Pokertracker. Also got a link below or my about page. Great programs. I recommend everyone to use this. So much more information about your opponents. You don't need to observe every hand carefully because this thing will do it way better than a human ever could. Moving on.
That's how you play, how your opponents play. You can run kind of equity calculations, this hand against this hand, or this hand against this range of hands. Those things progressed. Push, fold, like math charts for MTTs and sit and goes where, I have 12 big blinds. My opponent min raised. I think he has these hands. I plug them in manually. What hand should I shove with if I assume that he's going to fold this, this, and this and call with this, this, and this? And then here's all the math.
Yeah, that was exactly what it was done back in the day.
Math that spits it out. There were things like that over the years, and they've all progressed over the years. But solvers are something different because
actually, this approach still is very good and useful. Most people don't use it anymore. I think this is a big mistake because if you play against people with very inaccurate ranges that are away a lot from the optimal solutions, then you should still analyze the game in the way he described, and you will have way better results, especially against recreationals and fish or some live recs who only 3-bet aces. So keep that in mind.
What solvers do, are run brute force simulations and find actual unbeatable strategy for poker. So they can tell you the right answer effectively. And before solvers, we never really knew what the right answer was in any.
By the way, we still don't know the right answer because the computers we run these simulations on are not powerful enough, and we have to define the game trees in advance, and usually we just choose one bet size for every street and limit the options, and you don't have the full range of from bet from 5% pot to 100% pot, but only one bet size usually, and this already can't be optimal as we limited the range of options. But we cannot solve it in a different way because the game tree will become way too big and the computers we got are not strong enough to compute that. So we are getting close to GTO, but it's still not GTO.
Any given spot, it was your opinion, my opinion. We backed up our opinion.
By the way, GTO is game theory optimal.
With logic, of course, and oftentimes you could figure out who was more likely to be right, or you could get to pretty good decisions. But until things were proven in the way that solvers prove them, it's a different ballgame. And so I was, at the time that solvers came around, they started in No Limit Holdem, and I was primarily a pot limit ohm hot player. So I wasn't using them because there were no PLO solvers at that point. And I played a little bit of Holdem, like in World Series of Poker tournaments or here and there, and whatever came up. And I noticed, people playing a little bit differently, and I was kind of trying to guess what they were doing. I was still watching training videos of people who studied with solvers, and so learned a lot of the buzzwords, the things that they were thinking about. But I never studied them myself, and actually, the
PLO solver also came a little bit later than the No Limit Holdem solvers. This is also because PLO is a more complicated game. I mean, more complicated in the way that there are way more combinations and therefore more computing power is needed to solve it. For No Limit Holdem, you probably can solve game trees with more bet sizes way more accurate, as the combination of possible starting hands is insanely small compared to pot limit Omaha.
In the years following that, PLO solvers came out. I still didn't use them for many reasons, but it was a little intimidating. They're not the most they're not the most user friendly things, at least a lot of the ones that come out. And
if you have to do the sims on your own, this is not user friendly at all. But yeah, I already talked about the two solutions before, PLO Vision and PLO Trainer, just to refresh your memory. And these are relatively convenient, I got to say. The only issue with this is that you have to run your own sims as well if you want to know solutions for the river. And these are often incomplete. Boards are missing and stuff. So yeah, as it's so computing intensive to build this sims, it's not solved for every spot yet. So you have to choose boards that are similar to the ones you actually want to look at, and yeah, then try to get the concept. So this is also a bit annoying. I think for No Limit Holdem, we don't have this issue. And yeah, I also got a solver linked where you can run the sims on your own. I think there's also another reason why they don't have river sims. This is because river sims can be done relatively quickly, and then you are supposed to do it on your own. And yeah, this is also a field where you could get an edge, because I don't know many people who do river sims on their own. So do that if you want to get ahead of the competition.
This was the early stages. I just didn't use them. And I still felt confident that I could play and win at PLO, and I still was playing and winning at PLO. But then I kind of started playing a lot less because I already had a business I was running, launched another business, and for a couple of years or a few years was essentially full time doing that. So I wasn't even playing. So certainly not studying with solvers. And this is as PLO solvers were progressing and people were understanding more and more. And it was during this time, and even a little bit before this time, like even when No Limit solvers were out, that I was still making training videos, because I have done that for a decade and a half. And
yeah, I think he's one of the best coaches because he really does on-point commentary. I like his videos most. And yeah, if you also need to sign up for a training site, Run Advanced is the side of Galfond, and yeah, I also got links in my profile and below, if you consider that. Especially if you are new to the game or intermediate, these training videos can help a lot. And also people learn differently. Me, for example, I have to look at a solver and want to figure things out on my own. But some people learn best when they see other people play, and it's also more motivating for them. So yeah, do whatever helps you most and that fits your learning style.
I noticed I was very I feel insecure is a little bit strong, but it's the word I can think of. So a little bit insecure about the fact that, you know, I had my opinions for the way that I should play certain hands, and I was able to, you know, like guess what my opponents were doing and try to figure it out and try to figure out the counter strategy. But someone could just say, "Oh, actually, Phil, you're wrong. There's an answer to this play, and the play is supposed to be this." And I wasn't studying those things. So it was a weird time where I was actually, you know, and this might be part.
It's also weird what he's talking about, because if he is not playing GTO, the perfect answer is not GTO, but another strategy. So keep this in mind always. But when people are playing close to GTO, always following the GTO path is good way to approach a situation. Or if you play against an unknown. But if you play against a known fish, you obviously don't want to play GTO. So just some very obvious adjustments you could make. If he feels way too loose, for example, raising every hand, you can 3-bet him a lot lighter, for example. Or if he is continuing with hands that he's not supposed to continue with, you can raise him lighter, value bet lighter, all that things. Yeah, and solvers don't take this into account at all. So if you want to play optimally against fish, you still have to do the stuff he's mentioning. And that's one of the most important things, because you make the money from the recreational players. And yeah, if you play GTO against recreational players, you're still plus EV, but you give up a lot of EV and leave a lot of money on the table.
For the reason that I was playing less and less poker and focusing more and more on the business, I feel like I got disillusioned a little bit because I thought poker was kind of turning into a game of right and wrong answers, and therefore, you know, the skill set that makes you good at poker shifting from, you know, some hard work and preparation combined with an aptitude for understanding opponents and analyzing situations quickly, complex situations quickly, shifting from that to kind of who can study the hardest, who can memorize the most. And
actually, this is sort of the case. You have to do this against most hardworking regs, but against fish, you still have to do the things he mentioned.
And I was never that in school. I was a mediocre student because I had really poor study habits. Essentially, I didn't study, and so this. Yeah, I was getting disillusioned with poker. I thought, and I think kind of public sentiment was, you know, the people who study with solvers the most are going to be the best players, and there is a right or wrong play. And it was a bit later that I decided to initiate the Galfond challenge and get back into poker in kind of a bigger way and play against some very tough competition. And I was definitely I was definitely nervous to do this, and actually didn't make that decision until what I'm about to talk about, which preceded this. So I work with a mindset coach and hypnotherapist named Elliot Rowe. He's phenomenal.
A lot of pros do that. I wonder if it's worth it. I mean, I never did something like that. Yeah, comment below or write in the chat if you have experience with that. It'd be very interesting for me. I mean, at the top level, it seems like most players do this. So I heard this from Fedor, from him. I think Jay Nendes also does it.
If you want personal coaching with him, he's extraordinarily expensive, but he does release you know, course material and hypnotherapy MP3s and things like that, things that are more accessible. Anyways, he helped me unpack this fear that I had about studying solvers, which is effectively, it's effectively like I was.
It's also kind of funny. He has a training site, but also has a solver, and he still is fearful of studying with it.
A top poker player for a while. What if I try again, study with solvers, and I can't be again, and I just can't be that good because I don't think my skill sets lend themselves to succeeding in this new era. And this goes back to what he explained is kind of a typical, he calls them mental program.
I think the main issue with solvers is that everyone can buy these pre-built solutions nowadays, and it's a lot more easy for average players or the mediocre rag to still get quite good, and that annoys me a bit. So solver were definitely not good for me.
So detrimental mental programs that he used the analogy of like your mind and body or whatever is an operating system, and early in your life these programs get installed to protect you from something at that point, but we still have them 20, 30 years later, and they're not serving us anymore. They're actually harming us. So this one is called the too smart to fail. No, too smart to try program, which essentially, I was in grade school. I was learning things ahead of a lot of my peers. I didn't have to try. I would just get straight A's. It was all very easy. And, I never developed study habits. And now, and I get, my parents, my peers, my friends' parents telling me how smart I was.
Yeah, I also used to have very bad study habits. But if things actually interest me, I can be very motivated and will try to get very good at it. So it's not hard for me to study with solvers. But if I have to learn something stupid that I feel I will never use again in my life, for example, some bullshit stuff for school or for university, where I just get data and facts and have to learn it like 200 pages, this is very annoying and very hard to focus on. So I sort of got his problem a bit too.
Now, in middle school, high school, things start to get a little bit harder, and you can't quite ace everything without trying. Some people can maybe, but I was doing, I was like a B student instead of an A student without trying at all. And what happens is, or what happened to me, I guess I should speak to, is it's this situation of, oh well, what I've learned about myself, the truth that I know about myself is I'm really smart. And if I were to try hard and still not be as good as, still not do as well in school as some of my peers, I would find out that I'm not as smart as I think I am. And so I kind of protect my ego by not trying.
Okay, interesting approach, but definitely not the smartest one. I mean, okay.
And my identity and what I know about myself is I'm really talented, but I'm just don't try that hard. So that's why I'm not doing great. If I did try really hard, I would do fantastic. I'd probably be like better than everybody, but I'm just not. And so, I carried that with me. That's kind of how I was.
Yeah, hard work beats talent if talent is not also working, at least. And the talent probably doesn't need to work as hard, but yeah, if talent doesn't work, you can outwork them more or less if you are not that talented.
Was as a teenager. It's how I was throughout a lot of my poker career. Actually, I tried harder in poker because it was natural to. I wanted to. It was fun and exciting, but I still didn't study as much as my peers. And certainly now that solvers came out, kind of had the transition from grade school to middle school and high school all over again, where now, okay, I was great. Now there are people who are definitely better than me. A lot of people who are better than me because they've studied with these tools. And frankly, I was afraid that if I tried to study with those tools as well, and compete with them, I would fail. And then I would find out that I'm not as smart as I think I am. And so, anyways, Elliot helped me work through that and kind of recognize.
I mean, this is also why does he need a coach for that? I mean, he could just try. I mean, it's not that bad if you fail. You just have to quit at the right point. I mean, he used to be a great poker player, and if he fears that he's not anymore, he could set himself the limit or start relatively low compared to the limits he used to play and see if it's still going. And if it's not, he could just say, okay, that's not for me anymore. I mean, this is, I don't really understand ego things because, yeah, maybe I'm too rational to get these things. I do most things from my brain and not that much feelings and ego and shit. And that's how you should approach financial decisions.
That,
yeah, and playing poker is a financial decision in the end.
It wouldn't be so bad if I tried and failed, and that I wouldn't really try and fail. I would try and be less successful than I hoped I would be, but it would still be a better situation than I was in now, just avoiding.
Okay, very true.
Putting it. And so then I tried. And so I learned from solvers. I played these challenges. I had success. And what was really interesting to me and like the big kind of learning and really exciting thing for me is that the skills that were useful pre-solvers are still the skills that are useful in the post-solver era, because the game tree is massive, is way too big for any human to study with solvers, even if they have a great memory, which I don't, to study with solvers and memorize how to play in.
Yeah, it's a little bit different for No Limit Hold'em. You probably can remember and recognize patterns a lot better. But yeah, for for Pot Limit Omaha, yeah, you could still do what he's describing. You have to categorize hands into different categories and try to find patterns. But yeah, you definitely cannot remember all these things. But you can definitely find things and improve your game a lot when you decide to study.
Enough spots that it actually matters at all. I shouldn't say at all, but that it actually matters, that they become close to unbeatable. Everybody is beatable, myself included, by a huge amount. We all make mistakes all the time.
Yeah, I guess it's already proven what he said. They're not the absolute top pros, but the last time they competed against a machine who was actually using machine learning and not, don't know if it was that solver based, but their ass got kicked enormously. They lost with like 10 BB, 15 BB disadvantage against the computer. So yeah, humans can't compete with machines anymore.
Theoretical mistakes, but also mistakes, like we make theoretical mistakes. Some are more costly than others. And then we make mistakes that are, how do I put it? Well, we make ourselves exploitable by massively overfolding in one spot and overcalling in another and overbluffing in one, underbluffing in another, because too often we find ourselves in these nodes of the game tree that are on a board that is unusual, and the betting action's been unusual. It's not like something we've studied and we just can't figure it out in time. It's, we have 30 seconds to make a decision and we make the best decision we can. And some of the spots are too hard, essentially. And so
true.
What I realized as I played my challenges and since then is that I think even amongst great players, there's a misconception. The misconception that I used to have, maybe not as extreme, but the misconception that playing as close as you can to theoretically optimal poker is the way to be unbeatable.
This is the way. Just joking, Mandalorian.
The way to be successful. etc. I think that a lot of players are trying so hard to emulate a solver strategy without understanding fully why the solver is making the plays that it makes. And as such, they're trying to play the game based on memorization. And there are a lot of tools.
It's always better to play based on understanding and not memorization. You have to make sense of the plays, otherwise it's very hard to remember things correctly. And yeah, you probably will also not succeed. And the advantage from really understanding plays or making sense of it is that if there's a similar spot which you didn't train yet, you probably can also find a good solution. Not the optimal one, but a good one.
That are great for this, that can drill you over and over again until you get, like, your instincts are better at what's theoretically correct in one spot or another. But like I said, the game tree is so big that you're never gonna capture, or you're never gonna perfect all of the spots. So I think there's the misconception that, the way to get better is to get as close as you can to optimal. And there's not enough attention sometimes on making reads and finding holes in your opponent's games, taking advantage of them in a way that,
Yeah, I also think that timing tells, for example, are very underrated, because you probably will find them for almost every player, even the top guys, if you only play close enough attention.
Is exploitable. You deviate intentionally from optimal strategy, because that deviation is the counter strategy, the correct counter strategy to what your opponents are doing. And I think that the funny thing is, for a long time, like when solvers came out, it was the people who were not using solvers that didn't really get it, that were missing out on this extremely valuable tool that could further their understanding of the game so much. But I think now that solvers are so prevalent, you hear a lot of people talking strategy and teaching strategy. And
I think that especially pre-flop, it's very easy to get used to the playstyle of Solver, both in No Limit Hold'em and Pot Limit Omaha. You can play close to perfect, and that's what many people do. Probably also train a lot with this, because it's way easier to get an understanding from pre-flop than post-flop. And yeah, so the edge is not pre-flop anymore, especially for 100 BBs. But post-flop, you can still gain a huge edge in both games.
analyzing hands and breaking them down as, oh, well, this is wrong because look, this is what it says. And they're just leaving it at that. And I think they're wrong. I think that to do that is to really limit your ability to play, and also, like, further, making the correct play on the river that a solver would make with a specific hand. It doesn't really, it's not actually accurate that is right if the range that you got there with is not perfect. If you get there with a different range than the solver got there, which you're going to because you're human, it's not necessarily correct that the solver play is the correct play.
Correct. And it's also true for the range of your opponent. Your opponent will also not get with the optimal range to the river, and that also would lead to you having to make other decisions
on the river. And so I feel really strongly that there's going to be, I don't know, I don't feel this strongly, but I feel like there's going to be a kind of a collective, almost like stepping back, not from studying solvers, but from the way that we study solvers, or the way I see a lot of people study solvers, the idea of just getting the right answer in all these spots and moving on, leaving it at that, because I think there's so much more to it. And I see so many people who will, like, post a hand somewhere or share a hand with friends. Okay, what's the play?
Sharing hands nowadays almost became not useful anymore, because you could just look into the solver and then take this as the best approach. But yeah, I think especially against people who divide a lot from the optimal strategy, it still makes sense to share these hands. Or if it's very deep, you don't have sims for that, for example, then it also makes sense to share it. But otherwise, if you got soft hands when their opponent is playing well, then just go to the solver. No need to share it with a human who will have an opinion on that, but the opinion will most likely be worse than what you can get from the solver.
We look it up. Okay, my play was good. Or, okay, my play wasn't good. Or, you know what, my play was not what the solver would do, but it lost like, 0.01 big blinds in EV, so it's fine. So in some of these cases, they're right that their plays are good, but I think that people will realize what I believe to be the case, which is that the way that we thought about hands 10 years ago, that type of thinking still applies in the post-solver era and is still really important in the post-solver era. It's just that now we have this tool that gives us so much more information to use that logic and use that train of thought and thinking process with.
Nice video. Thanks for Galfond. Yeah, like, subscribe, share, all these good things. Yeah, signing out as well. No more things to add. Bye-bye.